Hey guys, if you're enjoying the content that I'm making, please click that subscribe button. Also remember to click that bell button and make sure to tick that box to send all notifications so you don't miss out on any videos. With that in mind, let's get on with the video. What's up guys, welcome to Munchkins Gaming, where we take your gaming to the next level. This is Munchkins logging in to bring you another Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia video, and welcome to my Should You Pull series, where I give you reasons why you should and should not be pulling for upcoming banners coming to Dissidia Opera Omnia. And on this video, we are going to be taking a look at the Ultimate Brothers banner. We are, however, only going to look at the one banner where two characters will be getting their EX Plus variant for their weapons. So in this banner, you have the chance to get Euphy and Barts' EX alongside with their 15 and 35 CP, and the third wheel for this banner is Galuf, and you can grab his 15 and 35 CP weapon as well. Both Euphy and Barts will be getting a rework, and we'll be going through that on this video as well. So without further ado, let's start this video. And we'll start this video off with a returning EX, and you can also grab this EX in the EX token shop. It is Barts' EX called the Great Sword, and it will give him the EX ability Nuki, I hope I pronounced that right, which is a melee brave plus HP attack and slightly raising the max brave attack and speed for 5 turns. This has a fast recast speed, and at 1 out of 3 limit break, slightly raising the brave damage dealt by Nuki. 2 out of 3, when using Nuki, it raises the party's brave based on his max brave, and at 3 out of 3, this will slightly raise the recast speed of Nuki. Now let's take a look at the plus variant, or the realized variant. At 0 out of 3 limit break when using Nuki, this will now increase the number of brave hits to 2 and moderately raising the total brave potency of Nuki, and the stolen brave can overflow up to 120% and will deal a 50% HP damage to non-targets. At 1 out of 3, this will moderately raise his max brave and his attack. At 2 out of 3, when using Nuki, it will now reduce the target's brave by 50% and will grant him the Wanderer buff for 4 turns. And this will also affect when the quest starts. He will have the Wanderer buff for 4 turns up and running. The Wanderer has the following effects. This will raise his own stat and will raise the party's max brave overflow limit for the stolen brave, which is really nice. However, this doesn't stack with the same buff. At 3 out of 3, when using Nuki, it will now have 4 brave hits instead of 2 and will increase the total brave potency, and again raising the max brave overflow limit. This will change his HP attack into the plus variant and will be a melee brave plus HP attack and raising the party's brave based on the HP damage dealt. The bonus spear you're going to be getting is called Break Boost Short. When breaking target, this will raise your max brave by 20% for 3 turns. Okay, so now let's talk about Barts' rework real quick. There are just a few little tweaks here and there. We'll start off with the double hand extension, which is his ability 1. The biggest thing that I've noticed is it now has 3 hits, and again increasing the total brave potency, and it will now actually trigger an additional HP attack after use, so it doesn't need to be at 80% of his max brave before it triggers an HP attack, so that's really great. The other change is the addition of 1 extra turn for his max brave up, and other than that, everything else stays the same. Now let's talk about the missile extension. The biggest thing here again is the large brave damage boost that you are going to be getting when using the normal variant, and basically you get more turns for the speed up 1. I do believe it was 3 turns before, it is now 5 turns. The plus variants pretty much stays the same. The only Difference again is adding that speed up duration with another 2 turns. So there's not really much big rework for Barts, however it does increase a lot of his damage potential. So after hearing all this information regarding Barts' rework and of course his EX Plus, how much should you be investing on Barts? I do believe you should start off with Barts at 2 out of 3 limit break. The main reason for this is the extra brave hits plus the extra max brave and attack, and of course you start off the quest with his Wanderer buff, which increases his own attack once again, and of course raising the max brave overflow for the entire party. And what's nice with this is you actually get the splash damage at 0 out of 3 limit break, and of course the increase in brave hits there as well. So it is kind of decent at 2 out of 3 limit break. And as you guys know, at least in my position, if you go with 2 out of 3 limit break as your minimum, you should actually go at 3 out of 3 when you're maxing it out. So the biggest thing is obviously the addition of the HP attack plus at 3 out of 3. And of course the number of brave is increasing, which means you can actually get to the cap for Barts. And of course increasing the max brave overflow is really nice and all, but the biggest thing here is the addition of that HP attack plus. It is a melee brave plus HP attack, however it does raise the party's brave based on the HP damage dealt. So he's still doing a lot of brave battery for your entire team with his HP attack if he's not doing it with his missile plus and of course his EX. His EX recharges very quickly, so you can take advantage of this as well. Okay, so now let's talk about Uffizi X, which is a new EX weapon that we're getting in the global version of the game. This is called the Fuma Shuriken, and it will give Euphy the EX ability called Gauntlet. This is a 6-hit AoE range brave attack plus a single target HP attack. And the brave hits are dispersed when there are multiple targets. The stolen brave can overflow up to 120% and will deal a 20% splash damage, and will also inflict the unique debuff No Cheating for 2 turns. This will also grant Euphy the Water God's protection for 6 turns. No Cheating has the following effects. The enemies will not be able to gain any brave and cannot gain any buffs. This does not affect the stolen brave and the natural brave recovery, however. Water God's protection will raise the party's max brave and attack. This has a slightly slow recast speed, and at 1 out of 3 limit break it increases the brave damage dealt by Gauntlet. At 2 out of 3, this will slightly raise the HP damage dealt to non-targets, and I do believe it is 50%. At 3 out of 3, this will slightly raise the recast speed of Gauntlet. Now let's take a look at the plus variant. At 0 out of 3 limit break, this will increase the total brave potency of Gauntlet and slightly raising the max brave overflow limit as well. At 1 out of 3, this will slightly raise Euphy's max brave and moderately raising her attack. At 2 out of 3, when the quest starts, she will now start off with Now It's Perfect and Water God's protection for 6 turns. And at 3 out of 3, when you're using Gauntlet, it will now have a 9-hit brave attack before the HP attack, increasing the total brave potency and again moderately raising the HP damage dealt to non-targets. This means that the splash damage at 50% will now be 100% AoE HP damage to the entire enemy line. Now while the Water of God's protection is active, this will turn her brave attack and her plus variant to the plus variant, increasing the number of brave hits to 2, increasing the total brave potency, and raising the party's brave based on her max brave. This will also turn her HP attack and plus variant to the plus variant, raising her brave based on her max brave before doing a range brave plus HP attack. This will also have a 120% max brave overflow limit, And the bonus sphere that you're going to be getting if you max this out is called Debuff Success Attack Boost Short. After inflicting a debuff, this will raise your max brave and your attack by 10% for 3 turns. Okay, so now let's take a look at Uffizi's rework. Again, there's slight changes here and there, but nothing too big. We'll start off with her ability 1 and the extension. The Snatch extension basically will give Euphy one more extra use for her Snatch ability. So before it only had +1 and now there's +2. Now everything else seems to stay the same. The only difference now is the Brave hit count increasing to 4 hits instead of 2. The max Brave overflow limit still remains the same, and now it will trigger an additional HP attack without needing to reach 80% of her max Brave. And I guess the biggest change here is the 4th bullet point, which is random buff copied from target extended to 1 turn, now becomes a random buff stolen from target extended for 1 turn. The next one is of course her ability 2. I don't need this extension. Again, this will give her an extra use for this ability. Before it was only +1 and now it's +2. So the biggest change for this ability is the addition of a 2-hit group range brave attack plus group HP attack. The HP damage dealt is going to be split among all targets, and it will have a moderately increased brave damage when attacking a single target. This will also have a 150% max brave overflow limit. And pretty much everything else stays the same. She still gets her HP attack like she has now. It hasn't really changed much, except for that big factor of an actual brave hit and an HP attack, which I think this ability really sorely needs, because if you're not really doing any brave plus HP attack right now in the current era, it's just pretty much a waste of a turn most of the time. Okay, so after hearing all this information regarding Euphy's rework and of course her EX and EX Plus, how much should you be investing on Euphy? Now, I'm a firm believer that you should actually start her off at 2 out of 3 limit break. This is because this is when she actually gets the Now It's Perfect and Water God's Protection buff up at the start of the quest. This basically means she has increased attack, speed, and I do believe a max brave overflow thanks to Water God's Protection, and I do believe a max brave up as well with Now It's Perfect. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that's the stats that increases with that unique buff. And of course, like I said earlier, if you actually went 2 out of 3 limit break, you might as well go 3 out of 3. And actually doing 3 out of 3 for Euphy gives her a lot. Increased number of brave hits, and now instead of a splash damage, it is going to be 100% AoE HP attack, which is really great. It sort of works like Balthier now with the 100% attack, and of course the only big difference, instead of stealing buffs, is you prevent buffs from coming up from the boss. And not to mention, you do get the ++ variant for both her brave and her HP attack. Now, before I move on this video, I would like to address a small feedback that I got regarding my reasons for pulling or not pulling for certain banners, and that it is getting quite repetitive. I know there are a lot more of you guys that are thinking the same thing, because I myself thought when I was making those videos that a lot of the reasons that I am putting are getting repetitive. So it's not just you, it's me as well. Now, the main reason for this repetitiveness is because all characters that have unlocked their EX Plus and you have invested a lot of your resources on them are all going to be chaos viable, as long as you put them in the right team composition. And not to mention, there are only a few characters that actually stood out in January. the two being Emperor and to a lesser extent Rosa. But don't worry, I will be working on this part of my videos moving forward because that's just how I work. I do try to improve little bits here and there until I feel like it is good. And I think, you know, I have made a few improvements already on how I present reworks for characters on my Should You Pull videos. So hopefully you guys have noticed the difference, and if the presentation is actually better, you can leave down in the comments below and let me know. And of course, if you guys have any suggestions on how I should be presenting, why you should and should not pull for this banner, let me know down in the comments below as well. Constructive criticism is always welcome, but if you're just gonna hate on me and not really give a good explanation on how to improve the video, then I'm just gonna ignore you. That's just the way it's going to be. But anyway, let's move on to the last bit of this video. And of course, we'll start this off in why you should be pulling for this banner. The first one is going to be if you actually need a DPS / debuffer. Like I mentioned earlier, Barts is actually quite decent. He's a good Brave Shaver with his gravity based attacks, especially with his missile ability. And of course, he is still a good Brave battery as well. So if you need a DPS that can shave off a lot of the Brave and of course give you some Brave battery to boot, then Barts is actually quite viable. The other thing is his Brave attack is actually a gravity based attack as well, so that's just one thing you should keep in mind as well if you are running low on his abilities. And of course, the debuffer side in Euphy is actually really good as well. She is able to put out 4 different kinds of debuffs and of course steal a certain buffs from the enemy as well. So she does work like a dispeller to a lesser extent than Balthier. Now the next reason is going to be if you actually need more characters for Dimensions End, because the 6th floor of Dimensions End actually comes out on the same day that this summoning board comes out. So if you are running low on characters, then you should probably pull on this because they are going to be quite viable for those chaos fights. And finally, of course, if you are a big fan of these 2 characters, you should pull on them. Okay, so now let's take a look at the reasons why you should not be pulling for this banner. And the first one is if you already have Vanille and Balthier in your party. And of course, if you have a lot of DPSs in your character banks already. So let's start off with the DPS side, which is going to be Barts. Now, as I mentioned earlier, he is actually a pretty nice character. However, if you do have a ton of different DPSs, especially if you have Emperor already, and if you have Ultimisia, there's less and less reasons for you to be actually pulling for this banner. Not to mention that Golbez's Lost Chapter is coming up. That means more DPS. So yeah. Now let's address the Vanille and Balthier bit on this reasoning. Basically, Euphy acts like a debuffer / dispeller to a lesser extent, as I mentioned before. Vanille is actually the closest character that I can compare her to, because Vanille actually applies debuffs as well as remove the buffs of the enemies. So, in all honesty, Euphy's debuffs are all generic debuffs, and they are the weakest forms of these debuffs as well, being the 1 variant. So it's not like it's the greatest debuffs in the world. Plus, you know, she can only actually steal 1 buff and removing that 1 buff on the enemy, and it's random as well, while Vanille can actually remove everyone's buffs. So obviously there's still some good things about Euphy, being able to stop any brave gain from the enemy, and of course preventing them from actually pulling up any buffs. But that is a very hard thing to predict, because there's pretty much no way for you to predict all enemies abilities, which one they're going to use. Of course, if they target themselves, it's more likely that they will. However, there are some abilities that basically will do a brave plus HP attack and actually will give them a couple of buffs here and there. Now, the closest thing that I can really describe Euphy as is a hybrid between Balthier and Lilithset. So Lilithset has that a lot of debuffs as well, and that's what Euphy does, is basically a hybrid of both of them, to a lesser extent of course, because you can't have very strong debuffs and of course a lot of ways to steal buffs as well. She would be too overpowered then, but that's the closest thing I can think of what she is. Now let's move on to the next reason, being you are waiting for the global first character to come out and be announced. And of course, if it is your favorite character that they finally announced, then obviously you would wait until that character comes out before you can come back on this banner as well, if that is what's going to happen. Hopefully the global first character comes out early in the week of February. That way you have an opportunity to come back if you really like Euphy, and of course Barts as well. Now, the last reason why you should not be pulling for this, and of course, is if you're not a big fan of these characters, and that's just the way it is. A lot of the people that are pulling for certain characters, it's because they're favorite, and if you don't like these characters, you don't have to pull for them. Anyway guys, I think that's it for this video. I do apologize, it's a little bit longer, but I do feel like I had to address that. You know, some of these reasons are getting repetitive, and I am still going to try and work to make this a lot better. But hopefully you guys do understand why some of it will be repeating, and that's just the way that chaos is, you know, and the EX Plus era. A lot of these characters are all going to be viable for the most part. And anyway, please remember to click like and subscribe if you haven't already. Leaving a like is going to help with the YouTube algorithm, and subscribing is going to help my little channel to grow. And the goal for the month is to reach 1,500 subscribers, so hopefully you guys help me reach that as well. And the other thing is, before I do forget, is for you guys to actually leave down in the comments below for ways for me to improve this Should You Pull series, especially towards the end. If you have any suggestions to improve this, please let me know down in the comments below. Also, make sure to follow me on my social media. I am on Facebook and on Twitter at Munchkins Gaming. This is Munchkins logging off, and I'll see you guys in the next level.